Hello, my name is Raj Chacko, and this is the second in a three-part series for account manager training for data center topics. So this topic will focus on data center software-defined networking and security. So I'm gonna again go through the four key steps. What are the business problems, the competitive landscape to solve these business problems that's out there. Third, I'm going to talk about our solution, Cisco solution, and then kind of tie it all back at the end with key takeaways or call to action, etc. So the number one business problem is, again, the application. Now we talked about it in my first video. The application is the most important element inside the data center for the business. So the ability for me to deploy applications faster is the key problem, right? How do I make sure that my applications are, coming online faster, quicker? I have the ability to be much more agile, to move applications inside the data center. And typically, what we see is the network is the bottleneck. Bottleneck in the sense that it is a problem for the agility and the speed of application deployment. Now, we talked about in the first video storage being an issue. So in this video, I'm going to highlight network as the problem for the application, and how do we address that with SDN and security. So that's business problem number one. Hey, I cannot deploy applications fast enough because network is creating a problem. The second element of network is the fact that security is not something that is embedded in today's networks. What I mean by that is when internet came along and when networking companies were building network devices, and when the protocols were being developed, for example, TCP/IP, security was never in mind. As a result of this, today what we are seeing is every CXO has this headache and a worry about when will I get hacked, how do I protect myself, how do I make sure that my data is protected, so issues like ransomware, cyber theft, how do I make sure that cyber attack, how do I prevent my business from these issues, because that's going to be a problem for me if I do not. The third business problem is in terms of business analytics or business intelligence that can be mined from the network. So I'll say network analytics. So let me talk about here for a second, right? Most companies that purchased data center infrastructure for the network, these are pretty significant capital expenditure items for a company. Now, understand the fact that everything is running through the network. Every aspect of every application, every user that connects in and out, the network has visibility into all of that. Now, a network sees everything. Network knows everything. It is a single point of truth for the entire data center. How can we leverage that feature, that network sees everything, and draw business intelligence out of that information? Can I grab network statistics and network analytics out of this information that is being passed along through these network switches? The ability for us to mine data from the network intelligently, be able to provide a feedback mechanism when an anomaly occurs to the business, or even stop that, allows us to be a lot more efficient in providing security, as well as providing the business the relevant information that they need to make the right investments into the business solutions. What we have here is the ability to provide predictive analytics, and using that, a diagnosis of business problems, right? So as you can imagine, I'm talking about two different things here. I'm talking about titration here. Essentially, network analytics could be also thought of as SIEM. So tetration essentially is a solution that will be a security information and event management system for our customers. So our focus here obviously is going to be around ACI and tetration to solve these three business problems. Before I go into ACI and tetration, I would like to kind of talk about the competitive landscape. There is not a lot to draw out here in terms of who are the major competitors out there. I'll talk about one big competitor when it comes to software-defined networking inside the data center, and that is VMware. VMware has a product called NSX. NSX essentially is a software-only solution. The problem with a software-only solution to address some of this is that they still require a next-gen hardware infrastructure. So now what we are creating for our customers with an NSX solution is more complexity. They have really not solved the problem of security. The issues with security with TCP/IP have not been changed with NSX. I mean, these two problems do not get solved by NSX. From a dollar standpoint, a customer now has to purchase two sets of networks. One would be a virtual network, one would be the physical network. So troubleshooting becomes a problem. There's a plethora of information out there that you can go into and learn about why NSX's solution is just suboptimal, and it's unfair for our customers to be put through the NSX story. So what is our solution? What is our answer to these two problems? ACI. Application-centric infrastructure. Again, remember, applications are the most important and the most relevant component inside the data center for our customers. So what we want to do is that we want to make sure that using a policy model, again, going back to the whole idea of policies, we want to make sure that we are able to build and provide them a network that is agile enough, it is out of the way, and it makes deployment easier, and it provides security embedded into it. So ACI, application-centric infrastructure. So here's where the rubber meets the road. So the way I describe ACI is in very simple terms. There are really two elements to ACI, right? One is network management, and two is application relevancy. So imagine this, having a network that literally configures itself based on policies defined for the application. That's what ACI provides. So a customer would create a policy on how an application would communicate or how an application should run on the network, and that policy is pushed down into the network and the network configures itself. That is one piece of it. Second piece is that we want to make sure that we provide relevant feedback into the application, so the application knows what's going on, a state of the network, if there is a security breach perhaps, how do you manage that? An example would be, let's say, if the network sees a large amount of traffic from two different servers which shouldn't be happening, how does it account for that? How does it make sure that the application is aware of that and make the relevant changes? Let's say if there is a node that went down in the network. When you think about a network is nothing more than a collection of switches, right? Collection of switches and routers. So here we have a handful of switches, and they are just connected, they are interconnected between each other, and this is what typically a network looks like. The problem has been the fact that these network devices are independent of each other, meaning we have to independently manage, configure, troubleshoot, etc. What ACI does is it literally brings the entire network switches into what we call a fabric, and you manage this fabric from a controller or from a front end called APIC. This is the management controller. So now, instead of managing each individual devices, I have simplified management using a single pane of glass management, which, by the way, has direct hooks into application. So what I'm able to do now is that I'm able to define a policy based on the application in the controller, and then this entire network is automatically configured. Which also means that if I need to add a new switch here, I don't have to configure anything. If switch 4 comes in, all I gotta do is connect switch 4 into the network, and then it will automatically program itself. Essentially what I've created is a very big logical switch inside my network where network management is plain and simple. The second element was the fact that I have the ability to provide some intelligence in terms of applications. So what we looked at was, okay, we said, what does an application mean? Application is essentially a collection of tiers. So I'm going to draw 3 tiers. There's, maybe a web tier. There is that's an app tier and a database tier. And these tiers connect amongst themselves. There are some requirements. And these tiers would have virtual machines, they could have physical devices, they could have things like firewalls and load balancers that are required off of for the application, because a web tier might need to talk to an app tier through a load balancer and a firewall. So a plethora of different components. But what we did was we said, okay, this is how an application looks like. And network has to provide connectivity, and these policies that firewalls and load balancers are able to provide, how do we automate all that? What we ended up doing was we created these tiers into what we called endpoint groups, or EPGs. So EPGs are nothing more than a collection of like-minded individuals. What I mean by that is that for a collection of devices that have the same requirements from the data center, we would put them into a single group, and we call them an endpoint group. So an app tier could have multiple VMs, could be on physical, virtual, whatever, and that would be one endpoint group. And then between the endpoint groups, we create what we call a contract. A contract is nothing more than a policy that connects these multiple endpoint groups. So once you configure this, you can deploy this into a stateless network, and you can plug any of these devices, any of the physical infrastructure onto any of these ports into this spine leaf kind of a design. So again, 2 components. The biggest thing that you can take away from this would be the ability for any customer to manage and deploy the network much more easier. And by the way, these are much cheaper, much more cost-effective switches, which are the Nexus 9000 series of switches for ACI Fabric. So that's ACI in a nutshell. In terms of tying this back into the 3 business problems that we mentioned, one was obviously the agility piece, right? Because network management is completely out of the picture, I'm able to bring network management to the application and actually to the hypervisor too. I'm able to quickly and easily deploy. So the network being a problem, or network management being a problem, has been completely eradicated with ACI solution. The second piece was with regards to the security aspect. This network is a end-to-end firewall. Unlike a traditional network where you connect 2 devices, they start talking, here you connect any 2 devices, or you connect anything to this network, those ports are shut down. There is a firewall, every port is a firewall. Literally every port is down until you create a policy to turn those and activate those ports. The third piece that we talked about was network analytics. And so that's a slightly different solution that's called tetration. So what tetration is doing is that we have embedded agents into our switches. It's a hardware agent to our switches. We also have software agents that are installed on the applications themselves. So here, let's say this is a VMware, this is a virtual machine, and there's an agent that runs here. And these agents on all the hardware and all the software provide an end-to-end visibility, or provide a feedback into a system that is able to correlate all this information and provide very fast response to questions like, what happened a week ago when a guest came into the network and I saw a spike on my network traffic? Was there a virus? Was there a ransomware going on? Or what happened? Why is one of my employees that should never go to a Chinese website is connected to my web, through my internet portal? So a variety of these questions could be asked, and also the Tetration system will automatically flag anomalies and bring it to the table and flag them, and it will also be able to, in the future, predict and stop network attacks based on this analytics that I'm talking about here. There are other functions of the Tetration analytics software which I'm not going to talk about today, but at a very high level, it's end-to-end visibility from the network standpoint that gives businesses the ability to analyze and proactively come up with solutions for their business needs. So this is the conclusion of the second portion of the second video. The next one I will be talking about cloud and hybrid cloud management and hybrid cloud adoptions.